Nobody at the dinner table noticed the billionaire's daughter disappear that night. Not her father, who was arguing with lawyers. Not her stepmother, who smiled as if she had been waiting for something to happen. Not even the child therapist, who kept writing notes without once looking up. Only Thomas, the night guard by the glass doors, saw the little girl walking barefoot across the frozen garden stones. He should have called the nanny. He should have stayed at his post. Men like him were paid to watch, report, and stay invisible. But the child was shivering. So Thomas took off his old security jacket and wrapped it around her tiny shoulders. Then he whistled a lullaby he had not allowed himself to remember for 20 years. For the first time in a year, the billionaire's daughter stopped trembling. She looked up at him, then reached into her pocket and placed a broken wooden toy in his palm. A little boat. Thomas stared at it. Under the chipped paint was a mark he had carved with his own hands 20 years ago. His dead son's initials. For several seconds, Thomas Reed forgot the mansion behind him. He forgot the glass doors, the cameras above his head, and the rule every guard at the Whitmore estate knew by heart: never touch the child unless there was immediate danger. All he saw was the boat. The paint was cracked along one side. The tiny sail had been broken and glued back badly. The bottom of the hull was darker than the rest, as if it had once been held too close to heat. But the mark underneath was still there. Sayar, Caleb Reed. Thomas had carved those letters with his own pocket knife when his son was 6 years old. Caleb had sat on the kitchen floor, swinging his feet, asking if the boat would be fast enough to win races in puddles. Thomas had told him no boat was fast unless it knew how to come home. Now that same boat was resting in his palm, in a billionaire's frozen garden, handed to him by a child who had not spoken since her mother died. Behind him, the dining room doors opened. Lily? William Whitmore stepped into the cold, followed by two lawyers, a frightened nanny, Dr. Malcolm Price, and Cassandra Vale. The outdoor lights snapped on. Lily flinched, not from the voices, from the yellow light above the east balcony. Thomas felt her small hand tighten around the sleeve of his jacket. William crossed the garden quickly. His face was pale with fear, but his voice came out like an order. "What are you doing with my daughter?" Thomas glanced down at Lily. Her bare feet were red from the cold. She had not let go of him. "She was outside alone," Thomas said. "She was freezing. You should have called the nanny." "I know." "Then why didn't you?" Thomas wanted to answer like a guard. Clean, short, obedient. Instead, he answered like a father. "Because she was scared." Cassandra moved beside William and crouched near Lily, careful not to let her dress touch the wet stones. "Oh, sweetheart," she said softly. "What did he say to you?" Thomas turned his head. That was the wrong question. Not, "Are you hurt?" Not, "Why did you come outside?" What did he say to you? Dr. Price was already writing in his notebook. "This is exactly the concern I raised," he said. "Boundary confusion, possible attachment displacement." Thomas faced him. "She's 7. The pen stopped. "I'm sorry?" Dr. Price asked. "She's 7, Thomas said. "She was cold. That isn't a diagnosis." For the first time that night, every adult looked at him as if the front gate itself had spoken. William's jaw tightened. He was a man used to being obeyed by lawyers, doctors, and board members. But he did not seem to know what to do with a night guard correcting a specialist in his garden. The nanny hurried forward and reached for Lily. Lily resisted for only a second. Then Cassandra whispered, "Come inside before you get sick." At the sound of her voice, Lily's hand slipped away from Thomas's sleeve. The child went still again. The nanny led her toward the house. Before Lily stepped through the glass doors, she stopped and turned back. Thomas stood under the white garden light, his jacket still around her shoulders, the boat still in his hand. Lily lifted one finger and touched the fog glass. She drew a curve, then a small triangle, a sail. Everyone else was already talking. William was questioning Dr. Price. Cassandra was telling the nanny to make warm milk. The lawyers were checking their phones. Only Thomas watched the drawing fade from the glass. It was not just a boat. The sail leaned too far left. The front curve was too sharp. The stern had the same uneven dip Caleb had once called brave. Thomas's fingers closed around the toy. Mr. Reed. Martin Hale, the chief of security, stood near the door. Thomas did not move. Martin looked at the boat. "Give it to me." "No." The word came out too fast. William turned back. Cassandra's eyes flicked to the toy, and for half a second, her smile disappeared. Thomas saw it. She recognized the boat. William held out his hand. Thomas,
Please.
hand it over. Thomas
Just
glanced
come with
past
me.
him. Inside the
Please.
house, Lily stood behind the glass with both palms pressed to the door.
Can't make...
Her lips
I
moved.
can't.
No sound came through.
Please.
But Thomas knew the shape of the word. No. He had seen Caleb make that same silent plea once, in a crowded fairground, just before the world took him away. Thomas placed the boat carefully into his coat pocket. "I'll log it as found property," he said. Cassandra gave a soft laugh. "William, surely we are not going to argue with a night guard over a broken toy." A night guard. A broken toy. Thomas looked at her and understood something he had learned too late. Cruelty did not always shout. Sometimes it spoke with perfect manners. William stared at him for a long moment. "Return to your post," he said. "We will discuss this in the morning." Thomas nodded once. He walked back to the security booth with the cold biting through his shirt. Inside, the monitors glowed blue in the dark. He sat down and pulled the boat from his pocket. For 20 years, he had trained himself not to think about Caleb's last day. Not the fairground music. Not the red balloon tied to his son's wrist. Not the 1 second Thomas had turned away to pay for 2 lemonades. 1 second. That was all it had taken. Now another child had placed Caleb's toy in his hand, and every instinct Thomas had buried beneath silence began waking up. He turned to the monitor showing the east hallway and rewound the footage. 9:41 at night. Lily was at the dinner table. 9:46 at night. Cassandra leaned toward Dr. Price. 9:49 at night. William argued with the lawyers. 9:52 at night. Lily slipped from her chair. Thomas leaned closer. The camera outside the east hallway flickered. Then the screen went black. When the image returned, the hallway was empty. Thomas checked the missing time. 11 minutes. His hand went cold. Before he could write the incident down, the radio on the desk crackled. Only static at first. Then a woman's voice came through, low and controlled. "Do not let him keep the boat." Thomas stopped breathing. On the monitor, Lily appeared for 1 second behind the glass of the east hallway. She looked straight into the camera, then lifted one finger and drew the number 11 on the glass. By morning, the Whitmore estate looked calm again. The garden stones had been washed, the glass doors wiped clean, and the dining room reset with white flowers, as if no child had walked into the cold the night before. But Thomas Reed knew better. Inside the security booth, he watched the east hallway monitor. At 6:30 in the morning, Lily appeared with her nanny. She touched none of her breakfast. She only glanced once toward the east balcony, lowered her eyes, and followed the nanny down the hall. Thomas noticed 3 things. Lily never looked at the staircase. She counted her steps when she passed the east wing. And she only breathed normally after the balcony light switched off. No doctor had written that down. Whitmore House sat above the lake behind black iron gates and private cameras, with an east staircase the staff avoided when they thought no one was watching. That was where Victoria Whitmore had died. 1 year earlier, the official report said Victoria slipped after a charity dinner and fell before anyone reached her. The newspapers called it a private family tragedy. William Whitmore called it something else only once, when he stood at the bottom of those stairs late at night and whispered, "I was in the house." Thomas had heard him during his 2nd week on the job. He had never repeated it. Men like him kept jobs by knowing which grief belonged to other people. After Victoria's death, Lily stopped speaking before the ambulance left the driveway. William hired speech specialists, child trauma experts, and art therapists, before finally bringing in Dr. Malcolm Price, who dressed carefully, spoke softly, and used large words for small wounds. Selective mutism, trauma fixation, attachment displacement. Thomas had heard them all. But Dr. Price rarely watched Lily when he spoke about her. He watched William, sometimes Cassandra. That mattered. At breakfast, Cassandra Vale entered in cream-colored silk and touched Lily's hair. Lily did not pull away, but her hand moved under the table and closed around something in her pocket. The boat was still with Thomas, locked in the bottom drawer of the security desk, wrapped in a clean evidence cloth from the incident kit. So whatever Lily held now was something else. A splinter of wood, a button, a secret small enough to survive inside a child's fist. Dr. Price sat across from Lily and asked her to draw. The nanny placed paper and colored pencils on the table. Lily chose black first, then yellow, then red. Thomas leaned closer to the monitor. She drew a small boat, a tall window, a square of yellow light, and a red line at the bottom of a staircase. Dr. Price did not look surprised. He turned the paper around, studied it, and wrote in his notebook. Then he placed the drawing inside his leather folder. Not Lily's folder. His. Thomas set down his coffee. At 9:15 in the morning, Martin Hale entered the booth. He was the chief of security, a broad man with silver hair and a face that had forgotten curiosity. Mr. Whitmore wants the garden incident logged as a minor boundary breach, Martin said. Thomas faced him. That is not what happened. That is what it is being called. She was outside barefoot. And you should have called it in. I did not have time. Martin's eyes moved to the locked drawer. Where is the toy? Logged. I asked where it was. Thomas opened the incident book and turned it around. Found property. One broken wooden toy boat. Recovered from garden. Given voluntarily by Lily Whitmore. Martin read it once. Changed the last line. No, Mr. Reed. She gave it to me. She is a child. That does not make it untrue. For a moment, Martin looked tired rather than angry. You do not understand this house yet, he said. Truth is not enough here. It has to survive the people who can afford to bury it. Then he left. Thomas sat still, because warning and threat often wore the same coat. Near noon, William walked Lily through the east corridor himself. He had canceled meetings and dismissed the nanny. He held his daughter's hand as if she might vanish inside the house. Thomas saw love there. Awkward love. Late love. Love buried under guilt and control. But love. William stopped near the east staircase. Lily froze. Her fingers loosened from his. William knelt and spoke gently, but Lily looked past him, toward the balcony light. Then she turned her head toward the nearest camera. Toward Thomas. She tapped twice against her wrist, then once against her chest. A rhythm. Thomas did not understand it yet, but he wrote it down. 2 taps, 1 tap. East hallway, noon. By late afternoon, Thomas found the first pattern. The east balcony light switched on every night at 9:52. The same minute Lily had slipped from the dinner table. The same minute the camera had gone black. He checked the maintenance schedule. The light was not supposed to be automatic. It had been placed on a timed circuit 3 months earlier. The request name was blank. He checked the camera outage report next. No error. No technician. No reboot. Just 11 missing minutes hidden between ordinary recordings like a missing tooth behind a smile. At 6 in the evening, Lily passed the security booth with her nanny. She did not stop. She did not look at Thomas, but a folded paper slipped from her sleeve and fell near the door. The nanny did not notice. Thomas waited until they turned the corner. Then he picked it up. This drawing was different. No boat. No staircase. Only a rectangle with bars, like a small window, and behind it a stick figure with no face. Above the figure, Lily had drawn a yellow light. Below it, in shaky red pencil, she had written one word. 11. Thomas folded the paper slowly and looked toward the east wing. For 1 year, the adults in this house had been asking why Lily would not speak. No one had asked what would happen if she did. That night, Thomas began his shift before sunset. He checked the west gate, signed the duty book, and returned to the booth without speaking. At 7 in the evening, the nanny brought Lily to the reading room. Thomas saw them on the monitor. The reading room was one of the few warm rooms in Whitmore House, but that night it felt staged. Lily sat on the carpet instead of the chair. That was the first thing Thomas noticed. The second was her hand. She kept one hand pressed against the floor, tapping twice, then once. 2 taps. 1 tap. The same rhythm she had shown near the east staircase. Dr. Price did not notice. He was speaking to William. Her fixation on objects is becoming more pronounced, he said. The toy boat should be removed from her environment completely. It may be feeding a false association. William looked tired. She has not spoken in a year. I understand, but silence can become a form of control if the household keeps rewarding it. Thomas's jaw tightened. Rewarding it. As if Lily had chosen silence the way a spoiled child chose dessert. On the monitor, Cassandra turned toward the nanny. Bring the nursery clock, she said. Dr. Price thinks familiar sound may help her settle. The nanny hesitated. Lily heard the words. Her tapping stopped. A few minutes later, the nanny returned with a small white clock, shaped like a swan. Thomas had seen it once in Lily's room. It played a soft mechanical lullaby when wound. The moment Cassandra placed it on the table, Lily backed away. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Dr. Price began writing. Start the clock, Cassandra said. The nanny turned the key. The first notes floated through the reading room. Lily clamped both hands over her ears. Thomas was already moving. He left the booth, crossed the service hall, and reached the reading room before the second turn of the melody. Martin Hale stepped into his path. "You are not assigned inside tonight." Thomas did not stop. "Turn that clock off." Martin grabbed his arm. "Mr. Reed." Inside the room, Lily slid under the small table and curled into herself. William turned. "What is going on?" Thomas glanced past them at the clock. "That song is wrong," he said. Dr. Price closed his notebook. "Excuse me?" Thomas stepped into the room. Cassandra's face hardened. "William, this is exactly what I meant." But Thomas was no longer looking at her. He was looking at Lily. Thomas lowered himself slowly to the floor. He did not reach for her. He did not say her name. He only extended one hand toward the clock and pressed the little brass switch on the back. The music stopped. Lily kept shaking. Thomas waited. Then he whistled. Not loudly. Not the full lullaby from the garden. Just the first 3 notes. Slow and low. Lily's breathing changed. Everyone in the room heard it. William stared. Dr. Price said nothing. Thomas whistled the next 3 notes. Lily looked at him. For the first time, not through him, not past him, at him. Thomas took the folded drawing from his pocket, the one she had slipped near the booth, and placed it on the carpet between them. Then, he took out the little wooden boat. Cassandra made a quick step forward. That should not be here. Lily flinched at her voice. Thomas noticed. So did William. Thomas placed the boat beside the drawing and turned it slowly. The bow faced the reading room door. Lily did nothing. He turned it toward the west window. Nothing. He turned it toward the east hallway. Lily reached out and stopped his hand. The room went still. Her small finger touched the boat. Then she pushed it 1 inch farther east. Thomas looked at the drawing again. A rectangle with bars. A figure with no face. A yellow light. 11. It is not the boat, Thomas said. Dr. Price frowned. What? She is not fixated on the boat. She is using it. Cassandra gave a soft, careful sigh. Using it for what? Thomas looked at William. Direction. William stepped closer. What do you mean? Thomas pointed to the boat. Every time she draws it, the sail leans left. The bow points east. She keeps showing the same place. Dr. Price stood. This is projection. He is assigning meaning to random child behavior. She stopped shaking when the clock stopped, Thomas said. That proves nothing. It proves the sound was hurting her. The child has trauma responses. Thomas turned toward him. Then why did you ask them to play the clock? Dr. Price's mouth closed. For the first time since Thomas had met him, the therapist had no ready phrase. William looked at the clock. What did you mean when you said the song was wrong? Thomas picked it up carefully. The swan clock was expensive, hand-painted, probably imported. But the back panel did not sit flush. One screw was newer than the others. This was opened, he said. Martin stepped closer. How can you tell? The screw head is different. The old ones are brass. This one is steel. Someone replaced the music cylinder. Cassandra laughed softly, but there was no warmth in it. You repair clocks now? Thomas did not look at her. No. I made toys. Long ago. Lily's eyes moved to him. Something changed in her face. Not trust, not yet. Recognition. Thomas turned the clock again. On the bottom, almost hidden under the painted wing, was a faint scratch mark. A line. Then another, like someone had tried to scrape off a label. William took the clock from him. His hand was unsteady. Who had access to this? The nanny looked frightened. It stays in Miss Lily's room. Dr. Price asked for it today. Dr. Price adjusted his cuff. For therapeutic purposes. Thomas picked up the boat and placed it back on the carpet. Ask her, he said. William looked at Lily. His voice softened. Lily? The child lowered her eyes. Thomas knew that tone. Adults used it when they wanted children to perform healing on command. He shook his head once. Not like that. William's expression darkened. Be careful. Thomas held his gaze. Do not ask her to talk. Watch what she moves. It was the first true crack between them. But he did not stop him. Thomas turned the boat again. This time, Lily moved it toward the east hallway, then tapped twice on the floor, once on her chest. 2 taps. 1 tap. Thomas repeated the rhythm on the carpet. Lily's lips parted. No sound came. But she reached for the red pencil on the table, crawled forward, and drew one short line beneath the boat. Then another. Steps. Not water. Not a lake. Steps. Thomas turned toward the east staircase. The room understood at different speeds. William first. Then Martin. Then the nanny, who covered her mouth. Cassandra last, because she had understood before everyone else, and needed time to hide it. Dr. Price closed his leather folder. "That is enough for tonight," he said. "This has become overstimulating." Lily grabbed the drawing before he could take it. A small act. Almost nothing. But in that house, it sounded louder than speech. Thomas stood slowly. William looked at him with anger, confusion, and something close to fear. "You will not be alone with her," William said. "I did not ask to be. You will not keep objects from this family." Thomas looked at Lily, then at the clock in William's hand. "Then do not keep the truth from her." The words landed hard. For a moment, William looked as if he might dismiss him on the spot. Instead, he turned to Martin. "I want every drawing Lily made in the last year brought to my office." Dr. Price stiffened. "Mr. Whitmore, I would strongly advise against turning therapy material into an investigation." William studied him. For the first time, there was no trust in his eyes. "I am not asking for advice." Cassandra's smile returned, but it came too late. Lily, still on the carpet, pushed the little boat once more. East. Then she tapped twice. Once, and pointed toward the staircase where her mother had died. William kept his promise for exactly 36 minutes. Then the house began protecting itself again. By 8:40 in the evening, every drawing Lily had made in the last year had been moved from the therapy suite into William's office. 2 assistants carried the boxes in silence. Dr. Price walked behind them, his face calm but his hands stiff around the edge of his leather folder. Thomas was not invited. He stood outside the office door beside Martin Hale, close enough to hear papers shifting, but not close enough to see what William was seeing. Cassandra passed once in the hallway. She did not speak to Thomas. She did not need to. Her eyes stopped on him for 1 second, then moved to the floor as if he were mud someone had tracked inside the house. Martin noticed. "You made an enemy tonight." Thomas kept his eyes on the office door. "I had enemies before tonight. Not like this." Thomas said nothing. Inside the office, William's voice rose, then dropped again. Dr. Price answered in smooth, careful sentences. Cassandra said something soft. A box closed. Another opened. Then William came to the door. He looked older than he had that morning. In his hand, he held a stack of drawings. Not one, not 5, dozens. Boats, windows, yellow lights, stairs, a faceless figure near a door. And in nearly every drawing, one small mark repeated near the bottom corner. 2 short lines. 1 longer line. 2 taps. 1 tap. William held the papers out to Thomas, but did not let go. "My daughter has been drawing this for 11 months, he said. Thomas looked at the top sheet. The boat was there again. So was the red line beneath the staircase. But this time, Lily had drawn something beside the faceless figure. A rectangle with wheels. A van. Thomas felt the air leave his chest. "Where did she see that?" William asked. Thomas did not answer. He could not, because the van in Lily's drawing was not just a child's shape. The rear door was open. One side had a black stripe. The front wheel was drawn too small, the way a child would draw something remembered in fear, not imagined in play. Thomas had seen that van before. Not at Whitmore House. At a fairground. 20 years ago. He gave the drawings back slowly. "I need to go home." William's eyes narrowed. "Now? There is something I have to check." Dr. Price stepped into the doorway behind William. "This is exactly why outside involvement is dangerous. Mr. Reed is connecting unrelated material to his personal trauma." Thomas faced him. The therapist's words were gentle, but they were meant to cut. William did not defend Thomas. Not yet. He only said, "You are still on duty." Thomas nodded. "Then log me out." Martin turned toward him. "That will be unpaid." Thomas took off his security badge and placed it on the small table near the door. Then unpaid. He walked out before anyone could stop him. The night air hit his face like water. Thomas lived 20 minutes from the estate, above a closed hardware store. His room held little more than a bed, a kettle, a chair, a silent workbench, and a blue tin box he had not opened in 7 years. Inside were the pieces of Caleb's life. A photo of his missing front tooth. a red fairground ticket, a birthday candle shaped like the number 6, a newspaper clipping, and the police report. Caleb had loved small, lost things. Thomas had carved toys for him first, then for quiet children who opened up more easily when holding something warm and handmade. He had not been educated, but he had known how fear sat in a child's hands. Then came the fairground, the music, the crowd, the smell of fried sugar, Caleb's red balloon tied to his wrist, the little boat in his coat pocket. Thomas had turned away to pay for 2 lemonades. 1 second. When he turned back, the balloon was drifting above the crowd, and Caleb was gone. The police called it a possible abduction. The newspapers called it a father's negligence. A detective asked Thomas the same question 3 different ways. The questions always came back to the service exit, the white van, and the toy boat found where Caleb should have been. Thomas had no answers, so the world filled the silence for him. Careless father, unstable man, maybe worse. The case went cold before Caleb's 7th birthday. Thomas opened the police report with shaking hands. Most of it he knew by memory. Time of disappearance, description of child, witness statements, service exit, white van. Thomas stopped. The copy he had kept ended on the witness list, but one name had been blacked out with a thick marker. He had never thought much of it before. Back then, he had been drowning. He had looked only for Caleb, not for what adults were hiding. Now, he looked closer. The black marker had faded with age. Under it, he could almost make out a shape. Not a full name, only 3 letters. Valeft. Thomas whispered them once. Vale. Cassandra Vale. His stomach turned cold. But then he remembered the way Cassandra had looked at the boat. Not surprised. Afraid. Thomas took out Lily's folded drawing from his coat pocket and placed it beside Caleb's report. 2 children. 2 boats. 2 silent pleas. 1 van. He reached back into the tin box and found the last thing he had kept hidden from himself. A thin wooden stencil, cut in the shape of a small sail. He had used it to mark his handmade boats. Each sail leaned slightly left because Caleb had once dropped the stencil and cracked one side. Thomas never fixed it. Caleb said the broken line made the boats look brave. The sail in Lily's drawings leaned the same way. She had not copied a random toy. She had copied his. Thomas stood so quickly the papers slid across the floor. But Lily had put Caleb's boat back into those hands. Not as a memory, as a map. Thomas gathered the report, the stencil, the fairground clipping, and Lily's drawing. He placed them in a worn envelope and wrote one word across the front. East. When he returned to Whitmore House, it was almost midnight. Martin was waiting at the gate. You should have stayed gone, Martin said. Thomas peered through the iron bars toward the east wing. The balcony light was on. I did that once, Thomas said. Martin did not answer. Thomas held up the envelope. This time I am coming back before the child disappears. Martin did not open the gate right away. He stood behind the iron bars, one hand near the control panel, his face half lit by the guardhouse lamp. You walked off shift, he said. I came back with a reason. In this house, reasons do not matter unless Mr. Whitmore approves them. Thomas held the envelope against the bars. Then wake him. Martin looked toward the east wing. The yellow balcony light burned above the stone arch, too bright for midnight, too steady to be accidental. For a moment, Thomas thought Martin would refuse. Then the older guard sighed and pressed the gate release. 10 minutes, Martin said. If this becomes another scene, I never let you through again. Thomas stepped inside. It was already a scene before I got here. In the security booth, Thomas spread the contents of his envelope across the desk. The old fairground clipping. The police report. The wooden sail stencil. Lily's drawing. Martin looked at them without touching anything. What am I looking at? Thomas pointed to the van in Lily's drawing. She drew this tonight. Caleb disappeared near a service exit 20 years ago. A witness reported a white van with a black stripe. That could be coincidence. Thomas placed the stencil beside the drawing. The sail in every picture leans left. That came from this cracked stencil. I made it. My son broke it. Martin's face changed a little. Not belief, but less dismissal, Thomas continued. And the witness name in Caleb's report was covered. The letters underneath looked like VAL. Martin's eyes lifted. Vale, Thomas nodded. The name sat between them like a blade. Cassandra Vale. Martin turned away first. Do you understand what you were saying? No, Thomas said. That is why I need the camera archive. Martin sat at the console. His fingers moved across the keyboard. The East hallway feed appeared. 9:51 at night. Empty hallway. 9:52 at night. Flicker. Black screen. 9:53 at night. Black. 9:54 at night. Black. Thomas leaned closer. Pull the exterior angle, he said. Martin opened another feed. The garden camera showed wind moving through hedges and the pale reflection of the balcony light. It did not face the east staircase. It faced the greenhouse at the edge of the property. The greenhouse. Thomas remembered Lily's drawings. The tall rectangle, the bars, the faceless figure. He had thought it was a window. What is that building used for? Thomas asked. Old greenhouse. Victoria kept orchids there. No one goes there now. Thomas kept looking. On the monitor, the greenhouse glass caught the yellow balcony light. For half a second, the surface reflected the east staircase window. Not clearly. Not enough to show a face. But enough to show movement. Rewind, Thomas said. Martin did. Thomas pointed. There. A dark shape crossed the reflection. Martin froze the image. The picture was blurry. A shadow stretched across the glass, distorted by rain and distance. Can you sharpen it? This is not a crime lab. Can you zoom? Martin zoomed. The image broke into grain. Near the bottom of the reflection was a small square of yellow light. Above it was something pale. A hand. Maybe. Or the edge of a sleeve. Thomas pulled Lily's drawing closer. Yellow square. Faceless figure. Barred window. She was not drawing a window, he said. Martin looked at the paper. She was drawing the greenhouse glass. A sound came from behind them. Both men turned. Elias Crow, the family driver, stood in the doorway. He wore his coat over his sleep clothes, as if he had dressed in a hurry. His eyes were fixed on the wooden stencil. Where did you get that? Elias asked. Thomas did not answer. Elias stepped closer. That mark. The little broken sail. You have seen it before. The driver swallowed. Martin stood. Elias, go back to the staff wing. No, Thomas said. Let him talk. Elias looked toward the hallway, then lowered his voice. I was at the fairground that day. Thomas felt the room narrow around him. What? I was 23. Temporary driver. Not for the Whitmores then. For a man named Roland Vale. Vale, Martin whispered. Elias nodded. Cassandra's father. Thomas took one step closer. You saw Caleb? I saw a boy near the service exit. Red balloon. Small wooden boat in his hand. A woman was speaking to him. Then a white van pulled up. Thomas could barely breathe. Why did you not tell the police? I did. Elias looked down. I gave a statement. 2 days later, a lawyer came to my apartment. He said I had mistaken the date. He said if I repeated a false memory, I would be charged for interfering with an investigation. My mother was sick. I needed the job. I was afraid. Thomas looked at him for a long moment. He had imagined the unknown witness for 20 years. Brave. Cowardly. Dead. Paid off. What happened to my son? Thomas asked. Elias's eyes filled, but he did not look away. I do not know. The answer hurt because Thomas believed it. Before anyone could speak, the east hallway monitor changed. Lily appeared. Alone. She wore a white nightgown and carried something against her chest. She looked left, then right, then moved toward the staircase. Thomas grabbed the radio. Lily is in the east hallway. Martin reached for the house line. No, Thomas said. Do not announce it. Martin stared at him. If the wrong person hears, she will run. On screen, Lily stopped beneath the balcony light. Her shoulders rose. She was shaking. Then she turned, not toward the stairs, but toward the greenhouse doors at the far end of the corridor. Thomas moved before Martin could stop him. The cold hit them both. Lily, Thomas said softly. She stopped because he whistled the first 3 notes of the lullaby. She turned around. In her hands was not the boat. It was the swan-shaped nursery clock. Thomas approached slowly. You want me to see something? Lily looked past him, toward the greenhouse. Then she tapped twice on the clock. Once on her chest, 2 taps. 1 tap. Thomas nodded. I am listening. Lily walked to the far pane of glass and lifted the clock. On the back, near the replaced steel screw, she pointed to a tiny mark Thomas had missed before. Not a scratch. A stamped number. 11. Then she touched the place where the music came out. Thomas understood. The clock had not only frightened her, It had been used as a signal. He looked through the greenhouse glass toward the house. From this angle, the east staircase reflected in the pane. Distorted, but visible. A year ago, a child standing here could have seen what happened inside. Victoria falling. Or being pushed. Behind Thomas, a floorboard creaked. Lily grabbed his sleeve. Thomas turned. At the greenhouse entrance, Cassandra stood in the cold, wrapped in a dark coat, her face calm enough to be terrifying. "Thomas," she said gently, "step away from the child." For a moment, no one moved. "Lily," she said, "come here." The child did not move. Thomas kept his voice low. "She brought me here." Cassandra smiled sadly, as if he had just proven her worst fear. "Of course she did. That is what frightened children do. They attach themselves to unsafe people when adults fail to protect boundaries." Thomas glanced at the swan clock in Lily's arms. "You know about the number on that clock." Cassandra's smile did not change. "Thomas, you are a night guard, not a detective, not a doctor, not family." Every word was quiet. Every word was meant to put him back outside the door. Behind Cassandra, footsteps crossed the garden. William appeared first, coat thrown over his shirt, hair uncombed. Martin followed him. Dr. Price came last, carrying his leather folder as if he had known he would need it. William stopped when he saw Lily beside Thomas. His fear turned into anger before it could become relief. "What is happening?" Cassandra turned to him quickly. "I found him alone with her in the greenhouse." "That is not true," Thomas said. Dr. Price moved closer, watching Lily the way a man might watch evidence. "Mr. Whitmore, I warned you this attachment could escalate." Thomas looked at William. "She was trying to show me the glass. From here, the east staircase reflects in it." William's eyes moved to the pane. For 1 second, doubt entered his face. Cassandra saw it and stepped into that doubt. "William, please, listen to yourself. You are standing in a freezing greenhouse because a security guard believes a silent child is sending coded messages through a toy boat and a broken clock." Thomas held up the clock. "Someone changed the music cylinder. Someone stamped the number 11 inside it." Dr. Price sighed. "Or a grieving man is forcing meaning onto objects because he never recovered from his own loss." The words landed like a slap. Thomas felt Lily's hand shake against his sleeve. William studied him. "What does he mean?" Cassandra lowered her eyes, performing reluctance so perfectly that anyone else might have mistaken it for kindness. "I did not want this said in front of Lily," she murmured. "But perhaps you should know who has been spending time near your daughter." Dr. Price opened his folder. Martin looked away. Thomas already knew what was coming before the first paper appeared. A newspaper clipping. A police summary. An old photograph of Thomas outside a station, younger, hollow-eyed, surrounded by reporters. Dr. Price handed the papers to William. 20 years ago, he said, Mr. Reed's son disappeared from a fairground. Mr. Reed was questioned repeatedly. The case was never resolved. William read in silence. Cassandra stepped closer. No one is accusing him of anything, but a man with that kind of unresolved trauma should not be alone with a vulnerable child, especially not a child who resembles what he lost. Thomas did not defend himself. There were lies too old to fight quickly. Instead, he looked at Elias, who stood near the garden path, face gray with fear. "Tell him," Thomas said. Elias opened his mouth. Cassandra turned her head. Only that. One small movement. Elias closed his mouth again. Thomas saw it. So did Martin. William did not. He was still looking at the clipping. "Is this true?" William asked. "My son disappeared," Thomas said. "Yes." "And you were questioned?" "Yes." "Why did you not tell us?" "You hired me to watch gates," he said. "Not to bleed in your office." William's face hardened. Cassandra placed a hand on his arm. "He is angry. That is understandable. But anger near Lily is dangerous." Lily suddenly moved. She stepped away from Thomas, but not toward Cassandra, toward William. She lifted the clock with both hands and offered it to him. William bent down. Lily tapped twice on the clock, once on her chest, then pointed at the greenhouse glass. William looked. Cassandra reached for Lily too quickly. "Sweetheart, that is enough." Lily recoiled. The motion was small, but sharp. William saw it this time. His hand froze in the air between them. Dr. Price spoke before the silence could grow. "This is overstimulation. She needs to be taken inside and settled." "Settled?" Thomas repeated. The therapist turned to him. Yes. Settled. No. You mean quiet. William looked up. She is not confused, Thomas said. She is afraid of the East Wing. She is afraid of that light. She is afraid when Cassandra speaks. And every time she tries to show us why, Dr. Price writes it down and takes the paper away. Cassandra's eyes hardened. There it was. Not sadness. Not concern. Anger. Dr. Price closed his folder. Mr. Whitmore, this has gone far beyond inappropriate. I recommend immediate removal of Mr. Reed from the property pending review. Martin shifted. Uncomfortable. William stood. For a moment, Thomas thought he might finally ask the right question. Why is my daughter afraid? Instead, William said, Martin, escort him out. Lily made a sound. Not a word. A broken breath. Thomas felt it more than heard it. William flinched. But Cassandra moved first. She knelt and held Lily by the shoulders. It is all right. He cannot upset you anymore. Lily's eyes filled with panic. Thomas stepped forward. Martin caught his arm. Do not, Martin said under his breath. Thomas stopped, not because he wanted to, but because one more step would give Cassandra exactly what she needed. A violent guard. An unstable man. A threat near the child. So he looked at Lily and whistled the first 3 notes. Softly. Once. Lily stopped struggling. Cassandra's face went still. William noticed that too. Thomas let Martin lead him out of the greenhouse. At the garden door, he turned back. Lily stood under the yellow light, Cassandra's hands still on her shoulders, the swan clock pressed against her chest. With one finger, hidden against the white curve of the clock, she traced a shape, 2 short lines, 1 long line. Then she pointed, not at Thomas, but past him, toward the security booth. Thomas understood. There was something there, something she had already left for him. Martin walked him to the gate without speaking. At the threshold, he handed Thomas his coat, but not his badge. You are suspended until morning, Martin said. Thomas took the coat. Behind them, the mansion doors closed. The sound was soft, final, but as Thomas stepped beyond the iron gate, his hand slipped into his pocket and touched a folded scrap of paper. He had not put it there. He opened it under the guardhouse lamp. It was Lily's drawing. A small room. A barred rectangle. A yellow light. And beneath it, drawn in red, a key. Not a staircase this time. A key. Thomas glanced back at Whitmore House. For the first time, he realized Lily was not only showing him where her mother died, she was showing him where something had been locked away. Thomas did not leave the gate. He stood under the guardhouse lamp with Lily's drawing in his hand, studying the red key until the paper softened between his fingers. A small room. A barred rectangle. A yellow light. A key. Not the staircase. Not the greenhouse. Something locked away. Thomas folded the drawing and placed it inside his coat. Then he waited. It took 18 minutes for William Whitmore to come to the gate. He arrived without Cassandra, without Dr. Price, and without the lawyers. That alone told Thomas something. William was not ready to trust him, but he was no longer sure he trusted the people inside either. Martin opened the side gate just enough for William to step through. He looked like a man trapped inside it. You were told to leave, William said. I did. You are still standing at my gate. Your daughter gave me another drawing. William's eyes moved to Thomas's coat pocket. Thomas took out the paper and handed it over. William unfolded it under the lamp. For a while, he said nothing. Then his voice dropped. Where did she get this? I think that is what she wants us to find out. William looked at the red key. This could be anything. It could. A child's imagination. It could. Another one of your connections. Thomas nodded once. It could be that too. The answer seemed to irritate William more than argument would have. You make it very difficult to dismiss you, he said. Thomas peered through the gate toward the east wing. I am not trying to be difficult. I am trying to be right before she disappears behind someone else's version of the truth. William folded the drawing again, carefully this time. I cannot have you inside the house tonight. Thomas almost smiled. Because I am dangerous? Because if I let you back in, Cassandra and Dr. Price will say I am enabling an unstable attachment. My legal team will say I am exposing Lily to risk. My board will say I have lost judgment. There it is, Thomas said. William's eyes sharpened. What? The board, the legal team, Cassandra, Dr. Price, everyone, except Lily. William stepped closer. Do not speak to me as if I do not love my daughter. I think you love her, Thomas said. I also think you keep asking powerful people what her fear means because you are afraid to hear it from her. The words struck harder than Thomas intended. William looked away first. After a moment, William reached into his coat and took out a folded document. I came to offer you a way out, he said. Thomas looked at the paper. A non-disclosure agreement. Of course. William held it between them. You sign this, accept a severance payment, and leave quietly until we complete an internal review. Thomas did not take it. How much is quietly worth? William's jaw tightened. Enough for a man in your position. There it was. Not cruelty, exactly. Something colder. A rich man's habit of believing money was a clean bandage for every wound. Thomas looked at the paper, then at William. My son vanished while I was buying lemonade, he said. For 20 years, people called me careless, unstable, maybe guilty. If someone had paid one witness to stay quiet, that silence helped bury him. So no, I will not sell Lily's silence back to you. William's face changed, not softened. Changed. This is not about buying silence, he said, but the words had less force. What is it about? Protecting her. From who? William did not answer quickly enough. Thomas stepped closer to the gate. From the guard who turned off the clock when she was shaking, or from the people who keep making her shake? William folded the agreement and put it away. For a long moment, only the wind moved between them. Then he said, What do you need? Thomas exhaled slowly. The old rooms in the east wing. Anything locked. Anything Lily could have seen from the greenhouse. And I need to know who changed the balcony light circuit 3 months ago. William shook his head. Access records are handled by estate management. Then get them. You think I can just demand every file in my own house? Thomas faced him. William understood the answer before Thomas spoke. That is the problem, Mr. Whitmore. The billionaire almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. Before he could reply, Martin's radio crackled. A guard's voice came through. East Service Corridor. Motion alert near the old nursery storage. William turned sharply. Thomas looked at Lily's drawing. A small room, a barred rectangle, a yellow light. A key. Where is the old nursery storage? Thomas asked. William's face had gone pale. East wing, he said. Behind the staircase. Martin opened the gate fully this time. No one asked permission. At the east corridor, the air changed. Colder. Still. The balcony light burned through the window, throwing a yellow square across the floor. William stopped at a narrow door half hidden behind a linen cabinet. I forgot this room existed, he said. Thomas looked at the lock. Old brass. Recently scratched. Martin tried the handle. Locked. William searched his keyring, but none fit. Thomas crouched and studied the brass plate. This lock has been used recently. How can you tell? Dust is broken around the keyhole. Someone turned a key here not long ago. William stared at the door as if it had become a person he no longer recognized. Stand back, Martin said. He forced the door with his shoulder on the third try. The room smelled of cedar, dust, and something faintly sweet, like old perfume trapped in cloth. Thomas stepped in first. It was a nursery storage room. Small iron crib frames leaned against one wall. Boxes of baby clothes sat under sheets. A broken rocking horse stood in the corner. Near the high-barred window, a yellow lamp had been left plugged into the wall. Thomas looked at the window. From inside, the bars matched Lily's drawing, exactly. On the floor beneath the lamp was a wooden box. Its lid was locked. William whispered, That belonged to Victoria. Thomas touched the lock. Small, brass, scratched. Then he saw it. Taped to the underside of the lamp base was a key. Red thread tied around it. Lily had not imagined the key. She had seen someone hide it. William's hand shook when he took it. The key turned once. The box opened. Inside were old photographs, a sealed envelope, and a small cassette recorder. On the envelope, written in Victoria's handwriting, were 3 words. If I fall. William stopped breathing. Thomas turned toward the hallway. At the far end, Cassandra stood in the yellow light. This time, she was not smiling. The yellow balcony light fell across her face and made her look almost carved from wax. William held the envelope in one hand and the cassette recorder in the other. For several seconds, he did not seem able to speak. Thomas watched Cassandra instead. Cassandra's eyes went to the recorder first, then to the envelope, then to Thomas. Not William, Thomas, as if he were the one thing she had not planned for. William finally found his voice. What is this? Cassandra walked toward them slowly. Something Victoria left behind during one of her episodes. Episodes? William asked. She was frightened after the accident at the charity wing. You remember. She became convinced people were watching her. Cassandra gave a careful breath. I did not want to distress you with it then. Thomas looked at the sealed envelope. The writing was clear. If I fall. That was not the sentence of a woman imagining shadows. William tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper and an old photograph. The photograph showed Victoria in the greenhouse, younger, smiling beside a little girl with dark hair and a small wooden boat in her hand. On the back, in blue ink, Victoria had written, "The boy at the fair saved me. Find his father." William read it twice. His face emptied. Thomas could not move. Caleb had been there. Caleb had helped her. His son had not only vanished from that fairground, he had left kindness behind. William looked at Thomas. Your son? Thomas could not answer. Cassandra stepped closer. William, that photograph proves nothing. Victoria collected strange things. She always romanticized old stories. Thomas reached for the cassette recorder. Cassandra's voice sharpened. Do not touch that. Everyone stopped. William turned to her. Cassandra softened immediately. I mean, it is old. It may be damaged. Thomas studied the recorder. The plastic case was scratched, but the tape inside was intact. A small strip of masking tape had been placed across the front. Victoria had written one word on it. Lily. William pressed play. At first, there was only static. Then Victoria's voice came through, faint but steady. If this is found, it means I failed to say it in time. William closed his eyes. The tape hissed. Cassandra has been speaking with Dr. Price about Lily's trust. Not her health, her trust. They are building a file that makes my daughter look unstable. If anything happens to me, do not let them take Lily away from her father. Cassandra lunged for the recorder. Thomas moved first. He caught her wrist before she could knock it from William's hand. It was not forceful. It was not violent. It lasted less than a second. But Cassandra knew how to use a second. She gasped as if he had hurt her and stumbled backward into the hallway. William turned. Dr. Price appeared at the corridor corner, as if he had been waiting for his entrance. Step away from her, he said. Thomas released Cassandra at once. Cassandra held her wrist against her chest. Her eyes filled with tears that arrived too quickly. He grabbed me, she whispered. William looked from her to Thomas. The recorder was still in his hand, but the tape had stopped. The truth had spoken for only a few seconds. Not enough. Not yet. Martin stepped into the doorway. Mr. Reed, move back. Thomas did. He knew the shape of a trap when it closed. Dr. Price went to Cassandra. Are you hurt? She shook her head bravely. Too bravely. I only wanted to stop him from damaging Victoria's things, she said. Thomas looked at William. Play the rest. Then preserve it, Thomas said. Do not bury it. William's face hardened. Enough. The word hit the room like a door shutting. Thomas faced him. Your wife left you a warning. My wife also suffered after Lily stopped sleeping, William said, but the sentence sounded borrowed. Cassandra had given it to him. Dr. Price had polished it. Thomas could hear both of them inside it. At that moment, a cry came from the corridor. Not a scream. A broken breath. Lily. She stood near the linen cabinet in her white nightgown, barefoot again, staring at the open nursery storage room. No one had seen her come. In her arms, she held the swan clock. Cassandra turned first. Lily, go back to your room. Lily did not move. Her eyes were fixed on the cassette recorder. William softened. Sweetheart. Lily backed away. Not from him. From Cassandra. Thomas saw the path before anyone else did. Lily's shoulder brushed the wall. Her hand found the side door handle leading to the garden. The east balcony light clicked on. Lily panicked. She pulled the door open and ran. William shouted her name. Cassandra cried out, Stop him! Thomas was already moving after Lily. He knew how it looked. A suspended guard chasing a silent child through the east door at night. But the cold outside was real. The path was real. The fear in Lily's face was real. Thomas ran into the garden, keeping his distance, whistling the first 3 notes of the lullaby between breaths. Lily slowed near the greenhouse. Then she turned toward the old path by the lake. Lily, Thomas said softly, not that way. She kept moving. Behind him, doors opened. Footsteps hit the stones. Voices called through the dark. Thomas reached Lily just as she stumbled on the frozen path. He caught her before she fell. She did not fight him. She grabbed his coat with both hands and pressed her face against it, shaking so hard the clock slipped from her arm and cracked against the stone. The music began to play. Not the wrong melody this time. A thin, broken version of the lullaby. Lily made a sound Thomas had never heard from her before. A small, wounded cry. He wrapped his coat around her, exactly as he had in the garden the first night. Then the flashlights found them. William stopped 10 feet away, breathing hard. Martin stood beside him. Dr. Price arrived with Cassandra, who pointed at Thomas with a shaking hand. "There," she said. "You see it now, William." He took her again. Thomas did not move. Lily clung to him. That made it worse. Dr. Price lowered his voice. "This is a dangerous attachment response. He has inserted himself as a replacement father figure." William looked at Lily, then at Thomas. Then, at the cracked swan clock on the stones. But Cassandra spoke first. "Call the police," she said. The words moved through the garden like frost. Martin hesitated. William did not. He looked at Thomas, and the doubt returned to his eyes. The old doubt. The one Thomas had seen in detectives, reporters, neighbors, and strangers for 20 years. A child was in his arms. So the world needed him to be guilty. Thomas slowly lifted both hands away from Lily. "I did not take her," he said. Lily gripped his coat tighter. William's voice broke on the command. "Let go of my daughter." Thomas glanced down at Lily. Her eyes were wide, pleading, silent. He whispered the only thing he could give her. "I will not leave the truth." Then he let Martin pull him away. By morning, Cassandra had changed the story. Not loudly. That was never her way. By 9 in the morning, Thomas Reed was no longer described as a suspended guard. He was a risk. By 10, he was an unstable former employee. By 11, Dr. Price had written the phrase that made Thomas's blood go cold. Potential substitute attachment fixation. Thomas read it from a copy Martin slipped to him outside the service gate. Martin did not meet his eyes when he handed it over. "I should not be doing this," he said. "Then why are you?" Martin looked back at the mansion. "Because last night, when Lily ran, she ran from the house before she ran to you. That was the closest thing to trust Thomas was going to get." Inside the packet was Dr. Price's recommendation. Lily was to be transferred that evening to a private child trauma center in the mountains, away from household triggers, staff influence, and media attention. At the bottom of the page was William's unsigned approval line. Thomas read it twice. "She will disappear behind paperwork," he said. Martin's face was grim. "The car comes at 6 in the evening." Thomas turned toward the east wing. 6 in the evening. Not tomorrow. Not after a hearing. Tonight. Cassandra was not waiting anymore. Thomas folded the paper and slipped it inside his coat. "Where is the cassette?" "Locked in William's study." "And the photograph?" "Same place." "Who has access?" Martin hesitated. Thomas already knew. "Cassandra," he said. Martin nodded. "And Dr. Price." He said all material connected to Lily's treatment had to be reviewed. Thomas almost laughed. Treatment. That word had become a velvet cloth thrown over a cage. At 4:30 in the afternoon, Elias drove the black town car to the service lane, pretending to check tire pressure. Thomas stepped from behind the hedge and slid into the passenger seat. Elias did not look at him. "You should not be here. You said that 20 years too late." The old driver flinched, but he accepted it. Thomas softened his voice. "I need the service entrance. If they catch you, they will call the police." "They already want to." Elias tightened his hands around the wheel. "There is a maintenance passage behind the greenhouse. It leads to the old nursery corridor. Can you get me there?" Elias nodded once. They drove without another word. He reached the nursery corridor at 5:12 in the evening. The house above him was preparing to erase the child. He could hear footsteps, doors opening, a suitcase rolling across the floor. Cassandra's voice, low and soothing, telling Lily that this was only a little trip, that good girls trusted people who knew better. Thomas stopped outside the old nursery storage room. The door was open. The box was gone. His chest tightened. Then he saw the lamp. Still on the floor. Still plugged in. The yellow shade threw a weak square of light across the wall. Lily had drawn that light again and again, not because she feared the lamp, but because it marked the place where Victoria had hidden the key. Thomas crouched and looked behind the outlet. A thin black cable ran from the lamp into a gap near the baseboard. Not an old wire. New. He followed it with his fingers and found a tiny transmitter taped behind the molding. A signal trigger. The clock, the balcony light, the nursery lamp. They were connected. Not by magic, not by trauma, by someone using sound and light to train a child's fear. Thomas pulled the transmitter free and put it in his pocket. Then Lily screamed. It was not loud. It was worse than loud. Thomas ran. At the end of the corridor, Cassandra and Dr. Price stood beside the open side door. Lily was in the arms of a woman in a gray medical coat. A white van waited outside the service entrance. A white van with a black stripe. For 1 second, Thomas was back at the fairground. Red balloon. Open rear door. Gone. Then Lily saw him. Her hand shot out. Thomas did not think. He moved. Martin shouted from behind him. William's voice followed. Cassandra cried, "Stop him!" Dr. Price stepped in front of Thomas. Thomas did not hit him. He did something quieter. He held up the transfer order. "This has no signature." Dr. Price froze. William reached the corridor, breathing hard. His eyes moved from the paper to the van outside. Thomas turned to him. "Did you approve this?" William turned to Cassandra. Cassandra's face changed only slightly. "Enough. I was going to tell you," she said. Dr. Price said delay would make Lily worse. William stepped toward the van. "Put my daughter down." The woman in gray looked at Dr. Price. That was her mistake. William saw it. For the first time, he did not ask a lawyer what it meant. He understood. Lily slipped from the woman's arms and ran to the wall near the nursery storage. She tapped twice on the yellow lamp, once on her chest, then pointed to Thomas's pocket. Thomas pulled out the transmitter. Dr. Price went pale. Cassandra whispered, "That proves nothing." Thomas held it up. "Then why does a nursery lamp need a signal trigger?" Martin stepped forward. "And why is the same van from the old fairground report parked at the service entrance?" Silence fell. Even Cassandra could not dress that silence quickly enough. William turned to Elias, who stood at the far end of the hall. The old driver's voice shook, but it did not break. "I saw a van like that when Caleb Reed disappeared. I gave a statement. A Vail lawyer buried it." Cassandra's face went white. Dr. Price backed toward the door. Thomas moved first, not toward him, but toward Lily. He knelt several feet away and placed Caleb's cracked sales stencil on the floor. Lily looked at it. Then, slowly, she took the red pencil from her pocket and drew beside it. A greenhouse pane, a staircase, a woman falling, and behind her, a hand. William sank to his knees. He was only a father finally seeing what his daughter had been trying to say. Cassandra turned and ran. Martin blocked the side door. Dr. Price reached for his phone, but Elias knocked it from his hand with a trembling fist. Thomas picked up Lily's drawing before anyone could step on it. The child looked at him. Her mouth opened. No sound came, but this time, she did not look ashamed of the silence. She pointed at the drawing, then at Cassandra, and William saw. Cassandra did not escape the house. Martin stopped her at the side door, but she did not struggle. She only lifted her chin, adjusted the sleeve of her dark coat, and looked at William as if he were the one embarrassing the family. "This is absurd," she said. "You are letting a guard and a traumatized child turn this house into a trial." William stood in the nursery corridor with Lily's red drawing in his hand. For once, no lawyer spoke for him. No doctor translated his daughter. No one turned the moment into a report. He looked at Cassandra, then at the white van waiting beyond the service entrance. "Who authorized that vehicle?" he asked. Dr. Price answered too quickly. "I did, in Lily's best interest." William turned to him. "I asked Cassandra." The therapist went silent. Cassandra smiled softly. "William, you are exhausted. Lily needs help. This entire situation proves it." Thomas held up the signal trigger from the nursery lamp. "Then explain this." "It is probably part of the old wiring. It was taped behind the molding," Thomas said. "New cable, fresh adhesive." Martin nodded. "He is right." Cassandra's eyes cut toward him. "You work for this house, Martin." "I work for Mr. Whitmore," Martin said. Then, after a second, "and for the safety of his daughter." That small correction changed the air. William turned toward the study. "Bring the cassette." Dr. Price stepped forward. "Mr. Whitmore, I strongly recommend preserving all materials until legal counsel arrives." William's voice turned cold. "If you say one more word before I ask you a question, you will leave this house in handcuffs." Dr. Price closed his mouth. The cassette recorder was brought to the main hall, not the office. Now the staff gathered at the edges. Martin stood near the door. Elias stood behind Thomas, pale but steady. Lily sat on the bottom step of the grand staircase, the cracked swan clock in her lap. Thomas stayed several feet away, where everyone could see he was not touching her. William placed the cassette recorder on the table beneath Victoria's portrait. Then he pressed play. Static filled the hall. Victoria's voice returned, thin but clear. "If this is found, it means I failed to say it in time." William did not move. The tape continued. "Cassandra has been speaking with Dr. Price about Lily's trust, not her health, her trust. They are building a file that makes my daughter look unstable. If anything happens to me, do not let them take Lily away from her father." Cassandra shook her head. She was paranoid. Victoria's voice went on. "I saw the transfer drafts. I saw the trust language. If Lily is declared emotionally unfit, Cassandra can petition to control the portion I left for my daughter. Malcolm knows exactly what words to write." Dr. Price looked at the floor. William's hand curled into a fist. Then came a pause on the tape, a breath, and a softer sentence. "Lily saw something tonight. She was in the greenhouse. She will not tell me, but she drew the east stairs, the yellow light, and a hand behind me. If I fall, it was not an accident." No one spoke. The great hall seemed to lose all its oxygen. Cassandra's face was pale now, but she still held herself upright. A recording made by a frightened woman is not evidence. Thomas turned to Lily. The child was staring at the portrait of her mother. Her fingers moved over the cracked clock. 2 taps. 1 tap. William knelt in front of her, but this time he did not ask her to speak. He placed the red drawing on the floor between them. "Show me," he whispered. Lily looked at Thomas. He nodded once. She picked up the red pencil and crawled toward the drawing. Slowly, with every adult watching, she added 3 things: the greenhouse pane, the yellow balcony light, and, behind the falling woman, a bracelet. Not a face, not a name, a bracelet. William turned sharply toward Cassandra's wrist. Her sleeve had slipped back. On her wrist was a thin gold bracelet with a black stone charm, the same shape Lily had drawn. Cassandra pulled her sleeve down, but too late. Martin stepped toward her. Dr. Price tried to move toward the side door. Elias blocked him. William stood. "You told me she was sick." Cassandra's voice cracked for the first time. "She is sick. Look at what you are doing to her, making her relive it in front of staff." "No," William said. "You made her relive it every night." Thomas placed the signal trigger on the table beside the cassette recorder. The clock, the lamp, the balcony light. Same pattern, same number, 11. You taught her fear, so no one would believe her memory. Cassandra looked at him with open hatred now. "You should have stayed at your gate." Thomas met her eyes. "I did. That was why you missed me." William turned to Martin. "Call the police, and my outside counsel, not the family office." Martin nodded. William turned to Victoria's portrait. Then at Lily, then at Thomas. "No," he said, "but it can begin." Lily stood. The hall went completely still. She walked to the table, lifted the little wooden boat from the evidence cloth, and placed it beside the tape recorder. Then she pointed at Cassandra. Her mouth opened. At first, nothing came out. Thomas saw the fear rise in her face. He whistled the first 3 notes, softly, not to lead her, only to remind her she was not alone. Lily took 1 breath, then another, and in a voice so small everyone leaned forward to hear it, she said, "She pushed Mom." William closed his eyes. Cassandra stepped backward, as if the words had struck her body. No one moved to comfort her. For a year, Lily had carried the truth without a voice. Now the whole house had heard it. The police arrived before sunrise. This time, no one asked Thomas Reed to wait outside the gate. He stood in the main hall while officers sealed the cassette recorder. Lily's drawings, the signal trigger, the cracked swan clock, the wooden boat, and the unsigned transfer order Dr. Price had prepared. For once, the objects were not called family property, not therapy material, evidence. Cassandra did not cry when they led her away. She only looked at Thomas and said, "You think people like you win because truth is beautiful?" Thomas studied Caleb's little boat on the table. "No," he said. "People like me lose for a long time because truth is expensive. But sometimes, a child keeps it safe until someone finally listens." Dr. Price left quieter, smaller, with his coat pulled over his wrists. William did not watch them go. He knelt in front of Lily, careful not to reach for her too quickly. "I am sorry," he said. "I made you prove your pain." Lily looked down at the cracked swan clock in her lap. Then she pushed it away. A small gesture. But everyone understood. Some things were not worth repairing. Later that day, William stood on the front steps of Whitmore House. Lily stood beside him. Thomas remained a few steps away. There were cameras, reporters, staff members, and police officers. William seemed to understand. He did not pull Thomas forward. He walked to him. In front of everyone, William lowered his head. "Mr. Reed," he said, "I called you a guard when I should have called you by your name. I treated your warning as a problem because it came from someone I thought I could dismiss. My daughter is safe today because you listened when the rest of us explained." Thomas did not know what to do with a public apology. Private apologies could be hidden. This one could not. William held out Thomas's security badge. Thomas looked at it, then closed William's hand around it again. "I do not want the gate," he said. William nodded. "Then what do you want?" Thomas turned to Lily. She was holding the wooden boat, her thumb resting over Caleb's initials. "I want my son's case opened." William did not hesitate. "It will be." 3 weeks later, the old fairground file was unsealed. Elias gave his full statement. The hidden witness line was restored. Roland Vale's name returned to the report. The investigation did not bring Caleb home. No paper could do that. But the file no longer called Thomas careless. It no longer circled him like a suspect. For the first time in 20 years, the record said what Thomas had always known. Caleb Reed had been taken, and his father had never stopped looking. Winter slowly loosened around the lake. Whitmore House changed in small ways. The east balcony light was removed. The swan clock was never repaired. The therapy room became a playroom with open windows and no locked folders. Lily still did not speak every day. Healing did not obey dramatic timing. Some mornings she said a few words. Some days she said none. But silence was no longer treated like guilt. When Lily did not speak, William no longer filled the room with specialists. He sat near her, waited, learned. One afternoon, William brought Thomas to the old greenhouse. The broken tables were gone. The dead plants had been cleared. Sunlight moved through the glass, bright and harmless now. On a workbench sat a small wooden box. Inside were photographs from Victoria's childhood. One showed a frightened little girl near a toy stall. Another showed Caleb beside her, holding out a small wooden boat. On the back, in Victoria's handwriting, was one sentence. "The boy with the boat helped me find my father." Thomas sat down. For a long time, he could not touch the photograph. He had spent 20 years remembering the moment Caleb vanished. He had forgotten to imagine what his son had done before that. Caleb had been kind that day. Before the world took him, he had helped another child find her way home. That child became Victoria. Victoria kept the boat. Lily inherited it. And after years of silence, fear, money, and locked rooms, Caleb's small kindness returned to save a girl he never met. 1 year later, the greenhouse opened again. Not for orchids, for children who had lost their voices in fear. Thomas made some of them himself. On opening day, Lily stood beside the lake in a yellow coat. Not barefoot, not shaking. Thomas stood behind her. William stood farther back, giving his daughter room to choose her own moment. Lily held a new wooden boat. This one had no hidden recorder, no evidence number, only a small carved sail leaning left. She placed it on the water. The boat rocked once. Then the wind caught it. Lily watched it drift toward the open lake. Then she looked up at Thomas and said, "This one knows the way home." Thomas felt the old wound ache. But for the first time, it did not only ache, it opened. Like a door, like a hand,